Welcome to our channel, Behind My Story. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Every one of us has a talent. It may be singing beautifully, drawing artistically, writing poetically. We're all different. Our special talents make us happy. We are all unique in our own way, living in a world full of peace, love, and happiness. But what if our talent became our bane? Well, my talent did become my bane. Let me tell you how. My name is Jenny, and I'm 16 years old. I lived in a quiet neighborhood with my parents and my little brother Matthew. I didn't have a lot of friends or hobbies. I was only interested in social media, but I always had a feeling that I had something unique, something that distinguished me from others. Turned out I was right. It all started on my grandmother's birthday. My family and I were traveling to her home to celebrate the occasion. The road was narrow and bumpy, with a rocky shoulder on one side and a river on the other. Dad was driving too fast, so obviously, Mom was a bit worried. Conversely, Matthew was excited. It was raining so hard that day that Dad feared the weather might get even worse, so he was driving faster than he should have to try to arrive at Grandma's house quickly. I was worried too, but for a slightly different reason. I had a feeling of impending doom on that trip. The rain got progressively worse. There was almost continuous lightning and thunder. Suddenly, we saw a big truck that had stopped on the road ahead of us. Mom screamed. Dad swerved to avoid hitting the truck and lost control of the car, which had gone on one of its sides and off the road into the river. It was the most frightening situation I had ever experienced in my whole life. We went underwater, and I felt as if we were in an aquarium. Dad was unconscious, and his forehead was bleeding. Mom was struggling, and Matthew was paralyzed with fear, his eyes tightly shut. Then, my vision went dark. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital bed, with a team of doctors around me. When I asked them about my family, the look on their faces told me that I was the sole survivor of that horrible accident. Several days had passed since the accident. I was having trouble sleeping. The doctors gave me some sleeping pills. They even tried hypnosis to help me sleep. Grandma came to visit me. She was very sad. She said I could come live with her. My whole life was turned upside down in an instant. A police officer at the hospital was kind enough to drive Grandma and I to her home. After he dropped us off, something strange happened. In a fraction of a second, I had a vision, a momentary premonition that something bad was going to happen to him. I saw him trying to catch a thief and suddenly crashing into another car. So I thanked him for the ride and told him to take care of himself, to be very careful. He smiled and said that he will. The very next day, as I was watching the news, I saw a report that very same kind officer had died in a car crash, just like my premonition. Grandma was upset when I told her what had happened. I didn't tell her that I had foreseen his death, because I knew that she wouldn't believe me. In fact, she might have even thought I was crazy. This strange turn of events happened again, with one of our neighbors, who visited us one day. She was a kind, lovely woman. I had a premonition that she would die in her kitchen due to a gas line explosion. I urged her to be careful with the cooking gas because it could be so dangerous, but she just laughed and said that she loved cooking and that there's nothing to fear. Grandma got a bit upset with me for making a big deal out of nothing. She said that I was just a little paranoid due to the accident and that my imagination was getting way too overactive and that I shouldn't try to scare people. Needless to say, the neighbor that I had warned did indeed die in a gas line explosion 4 days later. Coincidence? I think not. Am I somehow causing these incidents to happen? I couldn't help but think that I was somehow linked to the whole thing. I searched the internet for any information about this phenomena, and I found that it was common in people who had been involved in a traumatic experience, especially almost drowning incidents. I read a research that said that parts of the subject's brain would become very active. After our neighbor's accident, my aunt and uncle came to visit us. I had missed them a lot, but yet again, I had a premonition that they would have an accident going home, causing their car to explode and crash into the river. 2 days later, they were preparing to leave and head home. I begged them to stay one more night, but they said that they couldn't because they had work the next day. I told Grandma about my premonition, and she scolded me, told me to stop this nonsense. She thought it was my overactive imagination again. My uncle came in as Grandma was scolding me and asked me what was wrong. I wanted to say, "Nothing important, Uncle. Just premonitions of doom, that's all." But I didn't. I went to sleep instead and had a dream that Uncle was going to get run over by a car. Suddenly, I woke up to the sound of Uncle and Grandma's voices. They were talking about me, and it was raining outside. Uncle stood up and said that he had to get something from his car. I sat up straight and shouted, "No, don't go." Uncle said, "Jenny, it'll be fine. I'll just get something from the car." I couldn't dissuade him from going, so I followed him out. Uncle went out to his car and was standing by its door, which was facing the road. Then I saw the headlights. A car was coming down the road, driving towards us. I saw the car hit a flooded spot on the road and suddenly began sliding sideways, right towards Uncle. Instinctively, I made a decision to try and protect him. I had to at least try. I jumped in front of the swerving car. The driver saw me and tried to regain control. Suddenly, I felt a warm sunshine mysteriously coming down from the sky amidst the rain, and I felt calm and safe. And I had one final premonition before everything went dark. I adore my family. I adore our get-togethers, our joking around, our meals, everything. I can't imagine my life without them. But one day, I almost killed them all. No, I'm not insane, I assure you, so don't worry. I'll tell you what happened. My name is Ginger. I'm 18 years old. As you can see, I'm wearing an apron. This is because I love to cook. I like all things kitchen-related. My happiest moments are when I see my family eating a meal together. I always cook for them. They enjoy it too, and they support me. They let me try different dishes from different countries. I like to listen to their opinions about my cooking skills. I'm also addicted to cooking programs. One day, my cousin Charlotte came to visit before Thanksgiving Day. She likes to dress all in black, and today was no exception. For some reason, she had called me earlier and asked me if I had ever heard of Thanksgiving Day curse. I said no, of course, so she told me that the curse applied to large families who ate a big meal together on Thanksgiving. The curse was the result of an evil spirit named Vicky, who would possess the cook's body in some family's household and poison the whole family. She said that Vicky used to be a housewife who was a great cook and who loved her family, and yet she poisoned them all during Thanksgiving meal. She watched them die one by one, and then she killed herself as the grand finale. At first, I thought Charlotte was joking and trying to scare me, and I told her that it was nonsense, just an old wives' tale. But she said that every legend was usually based on facts. I paused for a second. That was partly true. I went to my room and searched the internet and found the same information about the curse that she had relayed to me, which frightened me even more. Vicky was just like me, or was it the opposite? I stopped myself from getting deeper into this. I needed to focus on preparing the meal. On Thanksgiving Day, my father bought some groceries, which included a white bottle of liquid. I presumed it to be milk, though it smelled a little weird, but I thought it was my imagination. My aunt called and said she would be arriving a few minutes later, so I had to hurry and finish the meal quickly. My finishing touch was dessert. It was going to be pumpkin candy. I prepared it using the milk that Dad bought. After everyone had arrived, I served dinner. We all sat down and prayed before the meal. Then, everyone started eating. Things were going well. Everyone was chatting merrily and complimenting me on the food. I was overjoyed. But somehow, I couldn't shake this feeling that something was wrong. I looked at Charlotte, but she smiled supportively. Suddenly, one by one, the people around the table started clutching their stomachs and groaning in pain. The last thing I remember before I lost consciousness was my brother calling the ambulance. When I woke up later, I was lying in a hospital bed, alongside all my family members, who were also lying in the hospital bed. The doctor came in and reported happily that we would all be fine. Then he looked at me and winked. He also said, "Next time, young lady, I suggest not using white paint in your cooking." And that was how I almost killed my loving family. End-of-the-world scenarios are presented in a lot of Hollywood movies. Zombie apocalypses, alien invasions, meteor collisions, monstrous solar flares, premature ice ages, and worldwide deadly virus outbreaks. The last one is the one I used to imagine. A deadly viral outbreak that spread all over the world and wiped out humankind. My name is Rita, and I'm 21 years old. And as you can see from my introductory paragraph, I have an active imagination. I'm in my senior year at med school, on my way to becoming a doctor. My parents died in a car accident, which left me responsible for raising my younger brother. Our aunts and uncles lived in another city, so they couldn't really help us much. It was up to me to nurture good habits in him regarding food, health, and education. I had to find work after my parents died, so I got a job at the hospital, where all the doctors predicted that I would have a bright future ahead of me. One day, the hospital director called me into his office and told me that I had won a scholarship to study and work in China. I was so happy. I'll get to work and study abroad in a foreign culture, but that meant that my brother would have to come along. So, we went to China, and we got an apartment near the hospital I was supposed to work. China was a beautiful country. All the people worked diligently. The area I was in was exceptionally clean, and all our neighbors were very kind. China was one of the most powerful industrial countries in the world. The only obstacle I faced there was finding suitable food to eat. The Chinese people ate practically anything that moved. Dogs, cats, snakes, scorpions, ugh, disgusting. But when I heard that they ate bats, I threw up all night. During my studies, I knew that China had a lot of rare illnesses, but I never imagined that I would encounter any while I was there. One day, our hospital received a case with strange symptoms. After many diagnostic tests, we still couldn't figure out what the affliction was. The patient had a fever and a very bad cough. His respiratory system was in severe distress, so we put him in the intensive care. Shortly after, we began receiving an influx of patients with the same symptoms, a red flag that an epidemic was probably already on the way, and my brother and I were right in the middle of it. What a nightmare! Soon afterwards, my brother fell ill. That's where I drew the line. If an apocalypse was coming, I wasn't quite ready for it yet, so we left China and returned home. Thousands of people died in China due to that rare disease, but thankfully, my brother recovered fully and is now okay. As for me, I shifted my studies to seeking out a cure for this new coronavirus that broke out in China.
Hello, my name is Andrew and I'm 17 years old. Playing tennis has been my great passion since I was a kid. Focus, stamina, and fast reaction times are key requirements of this game. I began playing tennis in primary school, and on my way to the top, I have faced some strong players, some of whom were older than me, but I beat them nevertheless. As I grew up and became more proficient, my ambition grew stronger too. My desired dream was to win the Grand Slam Championship and revel in the applause and cheering. I entered the national championship and reached the final match, which was to be played against a strong player. If he were to win the match, his next step would be the Olympics, so I intended to beat him at any cost. The problem was that he was more skilled than me. Fortunately, I believe that the end justifies the means, so I made a deal with one of his training crew members to put an anesthetic in his water bottle. As they say, money talks and makes all things possible. I'm not evil, I'm just pursuing my dreams by the most direct route possible. In the first half of the match, his powerful smashes allowed him to dominate the game. It was a pretty one-sided match. During the break, however, he drank some of the drugged water and suddenly felt very fatigued. The referee noticed his fatigue and asked him if he wanted to forfeit the game, but he refused. Needless to say, I dominated the second half of the match and won rather easily, to everyone's amazement. I was later nominated for the world title. I won many easy matches in the beginning, but in the semifinals, I was matched with a player who was even stronger than the one I had beaten in the national championship. Once again, I put my devious scheme in motion and bribed one of his crew members with a hefty sum of money. Once again, I was the disadvantaged player in the first half of the match. Then during the break, my opponent drank the drugged water from his bottle. As expected, I dominated the second half of the match. Just as I had taken the lead in the match, the referee stopped the game and directed 2 security guards to arrest me. Some security cameras had recorded the bribed individual drugging my rival's water bottle. The authorities had confronted my partner in crime, and he had confessed and turned me in. Consequently, I was disqualified from the match. As they say in sports, You win some, you lose some.
Hi there. I'm Marco and I'm 21 years old. I was born and raised in one of the poorest neighborhoods in my city. I tried to find a decent hobby at a young age that might lead me into earning a living. I found my passion when I began working in the computer field. I fell in love with technology. Because of my intelligence, I became famous in a short span of time. I could identify computer problems and resolve them immediately. I became wealthy, but my greed couldn't be satisfied. I want to get richer quicker, so I became a hacker. I experimented and played around trying to crack various low-level security systems. Then one day, I decided it was my time to up my game by trying to hack into banks and websites. My first challenge in my new career was to hack into my local bank. Banks have strong computer security systems, but I was able to breach their security protocols and breach their security defenses. I honed my skills and developed a hacking program that could hack any website without leaving a trace of evidence. I hacked into the bank's funds and transferred a huge amount of money to my account. In the morning, the news announced that the bank had been hacked by an unknown person. There were no leads in this case. I wanted to boast to people that I was the hacker who had cracked that bank, but I was too smart to do that. My next challenge was to hack into my country's national banking system, a higher-level security system. It took me a couple of attempts, but I succeeded in the end by transferring a hefty sum of money into my account. The whole city was abuzz talking about the phantom hacker who was stealing money from banks with impunity and without leaving a clue. My third challenge was the Ministry of Finance. I tried to breach their website a few times, but I failed each time. After some investigation, I learned that they had a Russian security expert in charge of their security, and he was very good indeed. As a matter of pride, I took it upon myself to make beating him my personal goal in life, like an equal opponent in chess. We began playing our game. I would try to hack in, and he would block me. This back and forth game continued for a little while, until one day he sent me a message. "Got you!" Suddenly, my computer shut down. Soon afterwards, the police showed up at my door and arrested me. So here I sit in prison. But the chess game between myself and my Russian adversary is not over yet. I will finish my prison term and come back for a rematch someday. It's a matter of personal pride now.